Deathbringer by Blake Carpenter. Overview. This one's an indie pub. Inga is a swordbearer. Women who inherit a magical weapon called Deathbringer. She's murdered on her wedding day by a noblewoman who steals the sword after killing Inga and her whole family. The sword brings Inga back to life, but only for a week. The clock is ticking for Inga to reunite with the sword before she's dead. Overview. I have a hard time liking fantasy for the most part, but having read Carpenter's story in Periapsis Christmas 2, a masterful story that I would love to read anything from an expanded story of that one, I wanted to pick up anything by him, and he did not disappoint with Deathbringer. A darker world with elements of magic, but also the technology of trains and firearms. This isn't steampunk per se, but those mid-19th, 20th century aesthetics elements are there. A matriarchal society is in place, but these aren't women who act like men. There are women who are highborn, noble leaders who are hardened under the stress of ruling and leadership, something that we would find in a world ruled like that. All characters are well motivated and actions are believable to their personalities. Crazy, I know. There is no worry about reading about overpowered boss babes who hate men with politics of current day. They live and exist and act in the world that they have been established in. Now, Carpenter writes the characters that you care about the story of each one, even the bad guys. I mean, ladies. Our main character, Inga, has a great story arc. She loves a betrothed, and when she experiences loss, she maintains that feeling as a real person would, thinking back to it, longing for it, thinking about what might have happened. She doesn't shake it off and move to the main male lead, Kale. She loves with a love of someone who is a young married and also experiences thoughts of revenge of someone thrust into from a small world she's accustomed to a much wider world and a metaphysical reality as well. Kale, the male character here, also is experiencing a change, is accustomed to reality, and his story of sexual assault in a matriarchal society establishes a great motivation and psychological damage that makes him sympathetic to the reader, although I wasn't fully convinced until much later in the story that he could be trusted. That's probably more says about me than about the author here. The main bad character is a great opposing force to our main lead. Her mother is also a great read, and any moments reading her were tense and also understandable. As for the plot, Carpenter establishes well and sets off on the journey well. About 20% of the start of the journey has a little to desire in terms of pacing. It's not bad by any means, just a different pace. I was a little leery at first with the idea of a talking sword, telepathically, and there was a power that's critical to the story that seems to be bestowed on Inga a little too conveniently, but having it come up a little at a time through the journey section would have added to a more established turn of action. Now, the story moves so phenomenally well in the later part of the book. From the city to the end is nothing but greatness. I'll also say that it is so difficult to convey fighting scenes to where it's not just a collection of punches or anime speeches between big moves. Not so the case here. Fights have weights and enough writing to make them action-based, but not every swipe of the sword or bullet fired has to be talked about. It seems clear that Carpenter seems to have some familiarity with combat fighting, especially with bladed weapons. And Carpenter has built the tension, and he lets you have moments of breath before it rises again. I do have to say, I did end up gasping literally in one moment of one of the final scenes, so I was invested thoroughly. And I thoroughly enjoyed this book and Carpenter's characters and writing. There's no getting bogged down in a long family lines, and there's a world built where there's enough detail given to you to know that you need, but there's more to explore. I will not only continue the series, but we'll be picking up pretty much anything else Carpenter has out there. It was a great way to kick off 2024. Final grade, A.